For those of you viewers who are also Star Wars fans, how many of you were playing Star Wars games back 20 some years ago in the 1990s? Odds are that not a lot of you were. I was, but I'm probably a little bit older than the average handheld gamer. This week is Star Wars week as far as game releases are concerned. The new Star Wars Battlefront reboot released, as well as another Star Wars game coming to both the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita. This other game is what we're going to talk about today. Here is my official review of the PS Vita and PlayStation TV version of Super Star Wars. Super Star Wars, much like the original Super Nintendo game it was based on, is loosely based around the plot of the first Star Wars game. Now when I say first, I don't mean Episode 1 The Phantom Menace, I mean Episode 4 A New Hope, the first actual Star Wars movie that hit theaters back in the 1970s. With gameplay in mind, Super Star Wars is a 2D side-scrolling platformer game with combat elements. Throughout the game, you will be going through various stages. There are two different kinds of stages. There is the side-scrolling stage where you are platforming and fighting enemies leading up to a boss fight, and there are the driving and flying stages where you are flying or driving some sort of vehicle through a semi-3D environment to fight off enemies and reach your next destination. These 3D levels aren't truly 3D because of how the Super Nintendo handled 3D visuals, but if you remember how the original Star Fox game looked, that's pretty much what these levels are like. Now, as you go through each stage, you will be fighting enemies. Your main weapon of choice will be a blaster no matter which of the three characters you're playing as, though later on, if you're playing as Luke Skywalker, you do get a lightsaber to use. The blaster is the main weapon of the game, and enemies drop a lot of blaster upgrades that you can pick up. Upgrades could be flame shots, plasma shots, an ion cannon shot, homing missiles. There are a lot of different ways you can upgrade your blaster. Enemies also drop other types of items. The main item they drop are small hearts that restore your health. You can also have them drop the blaster upgrades, of course, as well as items you can use for a limited time like thermal detonators, or small lightsabers called health swords that increases your maximum health. When you get to a boss, things change a little bit. If you know the era it came from back in the Super Nintendo and NES days, bosses had very intricate attack patterns that you had to learn and you had to dodge perfectly to be able to beat. Super Star Wars is exactly like this. Every boss has a specific attack pattern, some are easy to learn, some aren't so easy to learn. And you have to have a good weapon and you have to know how to dodge all of their attacks to really tackle the boss correctly. Noting on this is the difficulty of the game. The Super Star Wars games, Super Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back, and Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi were all known for being tough as nails, and the PS Vita version of Super Star Wars is still tough as nails. A lot of the platforming is very hard, the combat is very intense and requires very intricate movements, and overall, you're going to be frustrated in every single stage no matter how good you think you are at the game. To make this a little more manageable, the PS Vita version of the game has a new save system where you can pause the game at any moment and save your game. This is essentially a save state system since you're allowed to save wherever you want. The only bad thing about this save system is that it automatically tries to upload your save online. While uploading online does work a lot better in Super Star Wars than other PSN games, the bad thing is if you're offline, you're going to get all of those. You have flight mode turned on, you have airplane mode turned on, we cannot connect to the PlayStation Network. Dialog boxes come up. Even when you're loading local save data, it'll still come up because it automatically goes for the online saves first, and you cannot set it to look for local saves. One last thing I should note about the game, those of you who have played the Super Nintendo version should remember that there were a lot of cheat codes you could use for a debug menu, skipping stages, invincibilities in the side-scrolling levels, starting stage 1 with the lightsaber, among other things. I have tested all of the cheat codes, and almost every single cheat code I've tried has worked in this new game. As you know, the Super Nintendo had 4 face buttons, just like the PS Vita and the 3DS have. So, just translate the A, B, X, and Y Super Nintendo buttons to the X, square, triangle, circle PS Vita buttons, and putting in these cheat codes is very easy. Length is definitely one of the things you're going to have to think about whether you want to justify your purchase or not. Super Star Wars costs $10 on the PlayStation Network. The nice thing about this is that it is cross-buy with the PS4 version of the game. The downside is Super Star Wars is just the first Super Star Wars game, and Super Star Wars is only an hour or two long. So, while it is a lot of fun, you have to think about whether you want to justify spending $10 on a 2-hour Super Nintendo game. As far as the presentation is concerned, everything looks very faithful, just like the Super Nintendo version looked. You will notice that as soon as you boot the game for the first time, there is a bit of a border around the game screen. So, as soon as you go into the title menu, you can just go into options and you can choose various fill options. Basically, you can go in and make the game full screen if you want to. I prefer this, even though the game does look a little bit bigger, and it's a little bit weird playing the game for a while in its default resolution and then going to the fill. Other factors of the presentation are good. The frame rate never drops and the load times, aside from that one mishap with the save state, is just fine. Super Star Wars is a very successful port of the Super Nintendo game to current generation gamers on the PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, and PlayStation TV. There are a couple downers you might want to consider, like the annoying pop-ups when you try to save or load your game when you're offline, and the fact that this is essentially a 2-hour Super Nintendo game that Sony and Disney are charging $10 for. If you're okay with the price tag, then you're in for a fun and challenging ride. A short one, but a fun one. Reviews to Go rates Super Star Wars an 8 out of 10. If you'd like to comment on this further, feel free to below, or head to my site at reviewstogo.com.